I truly don't think that she was using more than the average athlete, if that makes sense. So some people, when they see something impressive, in order to cope, they drink that copium drink that says, well, everybody else must be on steroids or PEDs or testosterone because otherwise I would be that good. And that's just the ego talking. So this is still just as impressive.
Yeah, I could probably take a few nandrolones and run a 4-minute mile, right?
Sure. Yeah, keep telling yourself that. People are probably more interested in an excuse list. I know in the past we've done an excuse list for getting an STD other than having sex. So we've come up with our PED excuse tier list.
Yeah, so I suppose the most famous of these, probably thanks to Derek, More Plates, More Dates, is the Deca burrito. So the excuse here was that they ate a burrito and it was from an uncastrated, cryptorchid boar, and specifically the stomach of the animal. So that's oddly specific, but let's see, does that check out or not?
Yeah, so a cryptorchid boar, that's where the testes had not descended. So the testes are basically, they forgot to, they either didn't or forgot to castrate the boar, or perhaps there was an extra testy. Sometimes there's a third small testicle. But if you look at this explanation of this athlete who's Shelby Houlihan.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the run times there. So the 5K time, 14 minutes, 23 seconds. That's pretty impressive.
That's pretty good.
A mile time, 4 minutes, 24 seconds. That's about what you ran in high school, right?
Yeah, a little bit better than my high school time, but not quite my lifetime best if you convert a 1,600 meter time. But yeah, I didn't really run too many 1,500 meters, but that is extremely good for a female athlete. It's certainly elite. And by the way, I think that this is just as impressive, even though she's been banned for several years now for the nandrolone in her system, because I truly don't think that she was using more than the average athlete, if that makes sense. So some people, when they see something impressive, in order to cope, they drink that copium drink that says, well, everybody else must be on steroids or PEDs or testosterone because otherwise I would be that good. And that's just the ego talking. So this is still just as impressive.
Yeah, I could probably take a few nandrolones and run a 4-minute mile, right?
Sure. Yeah, keep telling yourself that. So it was analyzed by an expert, and they came up with a list of 7 or 8 different things that would have to happen in order for this explanation to come true. We'll put it on the screen, but I figured it'd be fun to read through these.
Yeah, so first, the athlete claimed they ordered a beef burrito, but they were served pork at the food truck, despite ordering beef. So that's number one.
Second, the pork consumed would have had to be uncastrated boar. So usually the pork you consume is not uncastrated.
And then third, the uncastrated boar would have had to enter the food chain through a completely different channel. To end up in the food supply, it would have had to been cryptorchid because there is, oversight and processes for raising the boar, and it looks like at about puberty, that's pretty close to the slaughter time. Mm-hmm. So the likelihood of there being even significant hormone production in an uncastrated boar is pretty low.
Yeah. Fourth, the uncastrated boar would have had to have elite, naturally high testosterone levels, much higher than the average 6-month-old pig or boar.
Yep. And then the athlete allegedly ate pork stomach. I don't actually know the details of why the athlete included that into their excuse. You would think that the legal team would try to be less specific. So they consumed some pork of an unknown quantity of unknown tissue origin from an unknown pig. But they said it was the stomach. And they talk about how the stomach would be prepared. It would be stripped of the inner layer and only the muscle would remain. And even if the uncastrated boar did have elevated androgen levels, those are not found in the muscle, but only in specific parts, kidneys, testes, or liver. Pork stomach, on the contrary, has one of the lowest androgen levels.
Next, sixth, if you look at the scientific literature, people who do consume huge amounts of uncastrated boar, for example, liver or kidney from that boar, her level was still 2 to 3 times higher than the highest value.
And then seventh, the carbon isotopic signature of the 19 nornandrolone detected in the urine was minus 23. So it was less carbon depleted than the standard ratio you would find in a corn-based diet-fed commercial pig, which the diet could affect that to where they would match up. And this is also why even TRT is technically not bioidentical, because it's plant-derived versus animal cholesterol-derived testosterone. And I think Derek has done a few videos on this. People should check those out.
Certainly.
Because it's a really interesting topic. And then what do we have last here?
Yeah, last was the chance of a cryptorchid, so undescended testicle, boar ending up in the normal supply chain is less than 1 in 10,000 on top of all of these previous things.
Yeah, so it seems extraordinarily unlikely. And I think that this is, it was a legitimate ban. I think it's like almost impossible for this to have been the case, or things would have matched up in one way or the other.
I wonder what the level would be compared to normal nandrolone levels in pregnancy, which do increase slightly. They're so small, they're hard to detect when you're not pregnant, because some people argue that nandrolone is a bioidentical hormone, 19 nortestosterone. But I bet that even the highest level that's detected in pregnancy is much lower than anything that was being discussed here.
Yeah, I would suppose the same. So yeah, as an ovarian hormone, potentially, if you have a ton of estradiol production, you're also ramping up production of other hormones that respond to that LH signal. So plausibly, the concentration would go up. You do have a little bit of hemodilution, but I think the concentration would still go up of like per ml, like there's this much nandrolone in the system.
Do they have nandrolone suspension? Because it's kind of a weird thing for an athlete to take. Like you'd think, well, maybe she was trying to take, nandrolone phenylpropionate, which has a fast half-life, accidentally took nandrolone decanoate or DECA. So she probably thought that all of the nandrolone had washed out because she was using that shorter phenylpropionate ester. And then it turned out to be decanoate. I assume that's what happened, but maybe they make suspension. That'd be a much smarter thing to take.
Yeah, and even with the suspension, I think my understanding is that in the urinary metabolites or the metabolites that stay in your body, those could be there 12 or even 18 months. Probably dose dependent to some degree. So like a female dose would probably be out more quickly. But given that this is, I guess you would think, fairly common knowledge in sports doping. That nandrolone would not be a good choice regardless of what ester or if any ester was attached to.
Its metabolites are also suppressive. So the metabolites in nandrolone, basically what it's broken down to, even if nandrolone is not stopping and inhibiting your natural testosterone and estrogen production, its metabolites very well might. It's also known for being particularly progestogenic. It's just a very weird choice. So maybe that is one point in that she was exposed to it some other way and not that. But in all likelihood, it seems very unlikely she got it from food. And you'd think that with all of the attorneys and whatnot at play and experts on both sides, that they would think of many other options of what it could have been.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I would imagine that most of the subject matter experts are on the side of USADA and WADA. Like they already have contracts, and obviously they can't play both sides. That'd be a conflict of interest.
Correct.
So you may be getting second tier experts to try to defend your doping allegations against the top of the top in the field, the people who are publishing and actually developing the testing. So it's kind of an uphill battle if you are trying to prove your innocence, even if you are innocent.
Yeah, that certainly seems to be the case.